Hello and welcome. You're watching the Tov Jewish News channel. My name is Michael Vilinsky, and my guest today is Marc Zell, Chairman of Republicans Overseas in Israel. Marc, great to have you.
Great to be here, Michael.
So, Marc, my first question will be about the Republican primaries in U.S. So, all the world has seen that Donald Trump has won the Iowa caucus, which is, if I'm correct, the election in the first state, which is the state of Iowa. Could you please explain us the significance of that and how decisive was his victory?
Well, first of all, his victory was extremely decisive. He captured over 50% of the vote, which is very unusual in the Iowa caucuses. He was received as a result twice as many delegates as both Governor DeSantis and Ambassador Haley combined. So that's a very decisive victory. However, at the same time, let's not overstate the importance of the Iowa caucus. Just from a historical perspective, the last 3 or 4 elections, the winner of the Republican caucus in Iowa did not end up winning the Republican nomination. So it doesn't really mean too much in terms of predicting, but it is an important confirmation of Donald Trump's strength among the voters, leading up to the first primary in the East in New Hampshire in early February.
So, if this tendency continues, will we see Trump winning the whole Republican primaries? Is that what's going on?
I think so. I mean, let's take a look. New Hampshire is a place where Ambassador Haley was supposedly gaining on Donald Trump. The polls show that he's at least 20 points ahead of her, even with her gains. Even more significant is the primary after New Hampshire, which will take place in South Carolina. That's Ambassador Haley's home state. And here Trump is leading her by even wider margin in her own state. So I think the handwriting is on the wall. Unless something totally unexpected occurs, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee, and it's a time for the party to unify and get ready for the general election.
Which contenders do you have on the Democratic side to Donald Trump, that can prevent Trump from winning?
Well, at the moment, Michael, there's only one contender, and that's the President of the United States, Joe Biden himself. Democrats have decided not to hold primaries and to rally behind the president. And the problem the Democrats have is that Biden, both physically and mentally, is showing a lot of problems, and his policies, both at home and particularly the border, crime, economy, and so on, and abroad with all the wars breaking out and around the world, not only in our region but in Ukraine and problems in South America and Far East. The problem is that Biden looks extremely weak, and if Trump is the nominee, as we expect him to be, the polls are showing that Trump and the other 2 Republican candidates would beat Biden handily in the November election. So this leads me to, and others, to speculate that, in fact, at the time of the Democratic convention in August in Philadelphia, Biden will not be the nominee. Either he'll resign or they replace him in some other fashion and replace him with somebody, celebrity type. Let's say, for example, the wife of the former President Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, who might be more attractive to the Democratic base, particularly the young people, the progressives, who are not at all excited about Biden's candidacy, and we're expected not to show up in serious numbers for the election in November. So there could be a very interesting summer.
And who are the other possible candidates who can become the Democratic nominee for the election?
Well, right now, as I said, I mean, among the political candidates, I mean, the one name that was being mentioned most frequently was the California governor, Gavin Newsom. But his polling numbers are not particularly good. The vice president, who would normally be Kamala Harris, would normally be the one you would expect to replace Biden, her numbers are even worse than Biden's. There's a governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, that wants to be a candidate, but she's not particularly popular. They have a problem with the political leaders in their party. And that's why the thinking is that they'll look outside the political arena to find a candidate who would be exciting to the public, even though he or she may not have the requisite experience. I'm talking about Michelle Obama. Oprah Winfrey has been mentioned. Even Taylor Swift. So who knows what they'll come up with? They're so desperate to stay in power that they'll do anything in order to win the election, including picking somebody who may not be qualified for the office.
These are some really surprising options for Democratic candidates, I should say. But I want to touch on something you just were talking about. You were talking about Biden's foreign policy in the Middle East. In the couple past days, we have seen Iran firing rockets at American bases in the region, shelling American buildings, and killing people that were related to America, and also apparently wounding some American soldiers, but we don't see any response from America. Can you explain us what is the reason behind that? Is that some America's apparent weakness, or does this madness have a strategy behind it?
I don't see any strategy, Michael. I think what you've got is an administration that lacks a coherent foreign policy strategy. And so they've been characterized, the American foreign policy during the last 3 years has been characterized by its reactiveness. They're not taking initiatives, they're reacting to problems as they occur. And that's no way to run a foreign policy, because it allows your enemies basically to dictate the agenda which is happening. And the fact that you cannot really take firm steps to counteract these attacks, like the Houthis, for example. The Americans brought in this international flotilla to the Red Sea. They started after they were hit, I think, 27 times by the Houthis without reaction. They finally opened up an attack on certain Houthi installations in Yemen, and then gave the Houthis advance notice of where they were going to be attacking. Most people think that the way to deal with the Houthis in the Red Sea is to attack the Iranians, the Islamic Revolutionary Group Corps, the IRGC. That if you did that, then the Iranians probably would back off. But they just see this; they see the weakness that you've noted, and they keep escalating the conflict. I mean, yesterday they shot rockets at the American consulate in northern Iraq, in Erbil, Kurdistan. So, I mean, they don't show any signs of backing off. The opposite, and that's a result of a foreign policy that's reactive and kind of wandering in the dark.
Aren't you afraid that coming into a direct confrontation with Iran can cause a regional war between U.S. and Iran? And let's not forget that Iran is, like it or not, a regional superpower.
Well, I think you're correct. Nobody wants to see that happen, okay? But on the other hand, what the current policy is leading exactly to that, because it's encouraging the Iranians. I don't know if I'd call them a superpower, but they are a dominant power in the region. And if they feel that the Americans are weak and lack leadership, they may continue to escalate. And that causes a lot of concern, because the region could very well erupt. There's another aspect to this which most people aren't paying attention to. I think yesterday the Iranians attacked Sunni rebel bases in Pakistan. Okay, this has nothing to do with Israel, and which just shows you the complexity of the situation here in the Middle East. Without strong leadership from Washington, this kind of deterioration of the situation, stability will continue, and that is really worrisome.
Marc, thank you very much for your insight on the situation in America and on America's foreign policy. Always great to have you in our studio.
Fantastic, Michael. You have a great day, and all the best to your viewers.
Thank you also to all of our viewers that saw this interview. Please don't forget to subscribe to us. on all our social media platforms and here on YouTube. Thank you again and have a great day.